Welcome back in, everybody, to a Friday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Ed Kracz. Ed, welcome to the show, man. How you doing on this Friday?
Happy summer, guys. Happy summer to you.
Happy summer. Stay cool, Ed. It's hot out there.
Yeah, it sure is.
It's gonna be hot it has been hot, but it's gonna be a heat wave. It's gonna be upper 90s next couple of days locally. A lot of people are not local listening to us, but
yeah.
And for them,
good training camp weather. Too bad
training camp. Not good training camp. Get it out of the way. I love that. Get those hot days out of the way. I need nice low 80 degree days, no humidity for training camp. If the gods of weather are taking any orders, that's when I'm going to order for Eagles training camp. Let's talk about Eagles training camp. I thought you had an interesting piece over at si.com/NFL/Eagles. The most important offseason hire for Ed Kracz on the coaching staff was who?
Clint Hurtt, the very wide, and I'm leaving out an adjective there, as Jordan Davis.
F.
Yes. And he is all that. But anyway, yeah, Clint Hurtt, defensive line coach, to me is the most important hire. I know Christian Parker, his job is to make sure this pass defense isn't torched like it was last year with, the next to last most yards allowed during the year, lots of touchdown passes. But Clint Hurtt, to me, he's got a young group. Nobody over the age of 25. Milton Williams and Marlon Tuipulatu are the two oldest members of that D line, and they're both 25 years old. Both came in the same draft of 2021, so this means this is their last year of their contract. And then, of course, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, two back-to-back first-round picks that he's going to be tasked with getting them to reach their potential. And to me, that makes him the most important hire on that staff. Christian Parker has a lot of bodies to work with, a lot of good, talented cornerbacks. So, to me, it was between him and Clint Hurtt. I know Bobby King is another newcomer at the linebacker spot, doesn't quite have the talent, only has a couple guys he needs to sort through. But to me, it's maximizing the potential for Davis and Carter. And, Clint Hurtt, I think, can do it. But that's why he's my most important hire of the offseason. And that, of course, John and Xander is excluding the coordinators. Obviously they're pretty important too. But, as far as assistant coaches go, Clint Hurtt gets my vote for the most important hire.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Ed, the one other guy I think I would add personally would be Doug Nussmeier, just because I think the quarterback position is obviously such an important position. But going back to Clint Hurtt, going back to the D line, how do you think we're underestimating media, the fans, everybody, the loss of Fletcher Cox? I mean, look, I'm high on Jalen Carter. I think the guy's going to be great, but Fletcher Cox is a big loss. He's been playing at a high level on this football team for a long time at a premium position. Now you're losing him. You're losing 700 snaps a year, whatever he played last year, right around that number. How big of a loss is that for the Eagles?
Well, it's huge, and Fletcher is really, unlike Jason Kelce, Fletcher has stayed in the shadows. He doesn't come out and, doesn't have a podcast, so he's not saying things that keeps him in the 24-hour news cycle like Jason Kelce is. But, we talked to Brandon Graham during minicamp, and, he said he had just hung up the phone with Fletcher Cox before he took the podium to speak with us. So, Fletcher's in the shadows, but I think he's still – going to be very involved with what goes on, with these young players and their development. He's a phone call away. How often he'll be there? He said he'd probably stop by. I got together with him when I judged in an Italian
he's judging hoagie contest. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, down in the Philly market, which was a blast back in May. So I got a chance to talk with Fletcher for a little bit, and he said he's going to be stopping in, but he's also probably going to be taking a vacation when training camp starts, at least at some point during training camp, because to get his mind away from playing football, he said he's probably going to go away for a while. But he's just a phone call away. But Xander, it's a huge loss to me, maybe even more so than Kelce, because of what Kelce left behind. You still have a star left tackle in Mulata. You still have an experienced right tackle in Lane Johnson. Landon Dickerson is a extremely talented left guard. You have a couple holes, and that's okay. I think they have the personnel to adjust to that. But that defensive line without Fletcher Cox, like I said, is so young and so inexperienced. There's no veteran, which is concerning. I don't know if the Eagles did themselves any favors, to be honest, by not bringing in a veteran at that spot. I thought that they would benefit from that, but they're apparently comfortable turning this thing over to Jalen Carter, 9th overall pick in the draft. But he can't play every single snap of every single game. You're going to need some depth there behind him and Davis. And then you have Milton Williams, Moro Ojomo. They're counting heavily on him, I think. Round pick from last year. So, these are young guys that they need to develop and mold, and Clint Hurtt is going to be responsible for doing that. But yeah, losing Fletcher Cox is huge, from on the field, off the field, all of the above. It's a loss that maybe we are overlooking just a bit.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the Nolan Smith was at some golf thing down in Georgia, I think, and he was talking about the Christmas gift he gave Fletcher, because Fletcher has a giant ranch in Texas. He's a rancher,
right?
As Fletcher likes to say. And so Nolan bought him a flamethrower for Christmas that he loves. So that was interesting. Speaking of guys who've got to step up, Nolan Smith, year two, we'll keep it on that defensive front. Typically, and you just talked about some of the depth issues and some of the unproven guys having to step up, whether it's Marlon or Moro at defensive tackle. Same thing at edge, man. I mean, we focus on Bryce Hupp because Bryce Hupp has got to be the guy.
Yeah.
But even without it, even if Bryce Hupp is the guy and turns out to be what the Eagles think he's going to be, they still need snaps from Nolan Smith and maybe somebody else, because you don't know how much you're going to get from Brandon Graham. We saw Josh Sweat. You probably want to limit his snaps after seeing what happened to him late last season with a career high. It's a little bit strange for Howie to, I don't want to say ignore, but not give that. Howie's always about the offensive and defensive fronts.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks a little bit less strong than it typically is this time of year.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, good edge rushers are awfully hard to find in this league, and that's why they tend to go quickly in drafts and free agency. They're not out there very long, and they do seem to be a little bit, needing depth on the outside there. There's always a guy that I liked who's kind of been up and down, Patrick Johnson. I think he can play a little bit. I think we've seen him play well at times, but he kind of gets lost in the shuffle for whatever reason. Maybe he's just not consistent enough. But this is, I think, his fourth year now in the league. I think he came in 2021 also. He might be
contract year for Patrick Johnson.
Yeah. For Milton Williams and Marlon Tuipulotu and a lot of these guys. So, and then you throw in a guy like Taron Jackson, who has kind of been, as a rookie, he came in and played some snaps, and, last year he was on the practice squad. Can he factor in to perhaps giving them something off the edge? But this is what we're reduced to. We're reduced to a lot of unknowns on that outside. And like you said, John, Nolan Smith is, he's got to come out. And I thought it was interesting. He said that he has the same hopes and dreams that everyone has for him, which is a 10+ sack year, tackles, setting the edge, all that stuff. So he knows what's expected of him. He wants to get to that level, but can he? And, he's going to be a big part of whether this defense sinks or swims.
Yeah.
Let's keep it on defense there, Ed. I mean, earlier this week, ESPN, I think it was Mike Clay, put out a ranking of the Eagles linebackers, or the NFL, the linebackers all throughout the NFL. Eagles group was ranked 30th of 32nd. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. We know that the Eagles linebackers aren't good here. But can they overcome that as a defense, right? Everybody is expecting the defense to take a big step forward. I think the team is counting on on the defense to take that step forward if they want to reach the expectations or reach the goals that they have for the year? Can they do that with this linebacker core the way it is right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say they're not good. I mean, we just don't know. And it's every component of this defense. We just don't know. Every level, we don't know. And, can Devin White be the Devin White that he was early in his career in Tampa? Can he rush the passer? He talked about that. He wants to be able to rush the passer. He's got 23 career sacks. I could see possibly, I know Fangio doesn't like to blitz, but maybe he lines up kind of, on the line a little bit. Maybe they bring him off of the edge and they don't play him at linebacker, and they put Nakobe and Zach Bond at linebacker when they do that with Devin White. Maybe he's the guy that's going to come in off of the edge. He's certainly got the build for it. He's a big dude. So we'll see. I mean, I think what we do know about this defense is the flexibility I think it's going to give Fangio. There's a lot of guys, and we've talked about this before. John likes to talk about the positionless NFL, and we see that, I think, on this defense. You have a lot of pieces that you can use in very versatile roles, and Devin White might be that guy. But I like Zach Bond. I like to see what he can do. I don't know why he didn't have a role with the Saints, but we'll see what he can do here in Philadelphia, because I think he's going to be given an opportunity. He was very good at Wisconsin. Played with was it one of the Watts, I think, or Andrew Van Ginkel. He played with Andrew Van Ginkel. Yeah. But I'm excited to see what he has.
All the Eagles talk about is Andrew Van. Why didn't they sign Andrew Van Ginkel?
I know, right?
I know. I would have liked to have old Rip here, Van Ginkel. Yeah. But you know what? He named his kid Rip, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. He's got a son that he named Rip. That might be a nickname. It might be like Andrew Van Ginkel II. But anyway, he's in Minnesota. Nothing we can do about that now. But and the Kobe Dean, another unknown at that linebacker spot that we just don't know. Can he stay healthy? And when he was healthy, he didn't really set the world on fire. So, it's an unknown group, but you can say that just about anywhere on this defense, except maybe cornerback, where they seem to be pretty well stocked.
One guy nobody talks about, Ed. Nobody. And we just went through it. We didn't talk about it, but I'm going to bring him up. Jalix Hunt. I think everybody just assumes, well, he's a developmental guy. We're going to stick him over in the corner. Maybe he's a prodigy. Maybe he shows up and says, I mean, he looks like an edge rusher. You look at the guy and you go, wow, that's pretty impressive. And maybe he is a developmental guy, and they're just going to redshirt him, and we'll revisit the subject in 2025. But what if Jalix Hunt just shows up and he's so good, he gets on the field?
We've seen guys come in that have looked like they could do the job, like Janarius Robinson from the Vikings.
Janarius should.
He was a big dude, and maybe I think he's with the Raiders now, and maybe he kind of clicks in Vegas. I don't know, but he certainly looked the part. And you're right, Jalix Hunt. You do forget about him. I forgot about him. He's a third-round pick, but you're right. Maybe he comes in and it's like, hey, let's take that developmental hat off of him. And let's throw him out there for a few snaps and see what he does. These rookies sometimes tend to play a little fast because they want to try to do everything all at once and be everywhere all at once. So, you have to be careful using him too much, obviously, because that seems to be the kind of guy he is to me, is he's going to try to do everything fast. Like we saw with Sidney Brown. Sometimes, in his rookie year, he was out of position because he plays so fast and wants to be everywhere all at once. So, if they can get him to calm down and understand his role, maybe they can grow it as the season goes along, and maybe he will be a factor. Like to see it because he seems like a really fun guy to talk to and cover, and I think he'd be highly entertaining. I think the fan base would love this kid. Maybe he kind of can fit in there and grow that role.
Ed, let's go over to offense. Are we having June blues about the wide receiver 3 position, or does it really not matter for this team? I
mean, look, they brought in, Zach Pascal 2 years ago. He had, 20 catches, maybe 30. I don't know. Quez Watkins. Yeah, I mean, Quez Watkins was the third guy. Didn't throw to him much. Alameda Zacchaeus last year.
Julio.
Julio, right? Yeah. Julio Jones, down by the schoolyard, Julio. they don't really need that extra weapon. You have Goddard, the two receivers. You have Saquon now. You have maybe CJ Uzama as the backup tight end. I mean, how many weapons do you really need? I mean, yeah, I think you'd like to have somebody to stretch the field. Sirianni talked about it a lot. That's why Quez was on the team, because of his blinding speed, being able to stretch the defense.
Jody loved that. Jody would love that when I would bring that up.
Well, my point is I don't think it matters. I mean, maybe John Ross has that blinding speed, and and Paris Campbell can run it too. And I like both those guys. We talked to them a little bit this spring. They're both likable guys, easy to root for. So maybe, those are the guys, and that's okay, because they're not going to throw them the ball that much. Now, if you have an injury to Brown or Smith, then it really matters. We saw that last year when Brown got hurt early in the Giants game. Their offense didn't do very well. And then we saw it in Tampa. Their offense didn't do anything, and AJ wasn't on the field. So if you lose one of those guys for any stretch, then yes, it's going to matter greatly. But right now, heading into training camp, everybody's healthy. It doesn't matter. But things change pretty quickly, and it could matter, before we know it.
Yeah. Sure.
The problem is, from a roster perspective, Ed, I think, they're going to keep 6 receivers, and it's one of their weakest positions from a depth perspective. Obviously, it's great at the top with AJ and Devontae, but the depth is not there. But from my perspective, we know how the NFL works. They're going to keep the rookies. They're going to keep Benaiah Smith, who I got a Shelton Gibson vibe in minicamp. He couldn't catch anything. Punts, catches, ball thrown to him. Hopefully he settles down. Johnny Wilson's going to make this team, but he's probably not going to be ready early on. Britton Covey's going to make this team because he's one of the best punt returners in football. And they won't give him an opportunity. By the way, I think they should give him a chance to be a slot receiver, but they won't. And then you're going to have Paris or John Ross as that last guy, but really the third receiver. I don't know. I don't like that. It's one of their weakest positions, and they're going to keep a bunch of guys just because they feel they have to keep a bunch of guys.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see on those rookies. I mean, and it'll depend on what kind of tape they put out there in the summer, in the joint practice with the Patriots, and then, the 3 preseason games, which are kind of weird, playing the Vikings in the preseason. That's kind of a strange game that never really.
It's a strange game.
Yeah, that really never happens. But yeah, so I think a lot of it's going to depend on that. I thought Johnny Wilson, he was okay in the 5 times we watched him practice. He dropped some passes, especially in individual drills where you have to make every single catch. Nobody's guarding you.
He was Chris Carter compared to Anias.
Anias did
everything.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if these guys don't really shine much, and they'll be given every opportunity to play in the preseason, there's no doubt. So if they put together a pretty good preseason, then you probably have to keep them. But, I wouldn't rule out, releasing these guys and trying to get them to the practice squad, to be honest. If, and again, there's a lot of variables here. If John Ross plays well, if Paris Campbell continues to, show he can make this team. So there's a long way to go. But I wouldn't quite rule out the fact that maybe the Eagles can move on from these 2 rookies, or at least one of them anyway, and try to get them to the practice squad. So, a lot of summer to go to figure all that out. But don't be surprised if one of those guys gets cut and they try to bring him back to the practice squad.
Ed, in your opinion, how does Saquon Barkley help this offense this year?
Well, defenses are going to have to be aware of what he is and where he's doing. They're going to have to include him in every game plan that defenses put together, I think. And that's a win right there. I mean, are you going to game plan for Kenny Gainwell to beat you? Probably not. Saquon, yeah, you got to make sure he doesn't beat you. And then you have to make sure AJ doesn't beat, and Devontae. So he makes this, they talk about baseball and batting orders, how you can kind of make the batting order a little bit longer and, make it harder for pitchers to go through all 9 guys. It's the same way with football with this lineup. It's just now you have to game plan for an extra guy, another guy. So I think just from that aspect, he helps. Whether or not he's, the 1,400 yard rusher that we think he can be this year, he still is someone you have to account for if you're a defensive coordinator when you're putting together a game plan against the Eagles.
The aggregators will not shut up about Justin Simmons, said Kracz. And if it's not Justin Simmons, it's Eddie Jackson. If the Eagles are going to add a veteran player, a somewhat meaningful veteran player between now and training camp, do you think it'll be at safety? Do you think it'll be at defensive tackle? Do you think it'll be at wide receiver? What do you think? Howie doesn't, he talks about talent acquisition season all the time, and it exists right up till the trade deadline. He generally is going to add somebody at some point. Is he going to wait? Does he want to see guys in training camp? Is it going to be Steve Nelson showing up a day before training camp? Is he going to add somebody somewhere on this roster?
Steve Nelson. I mean, another cornerback. I mean, maybe. I mean, he added.
No, I meant Steve because he showed up like a day before training.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. But I think you hit the.
They have 14 cornerbacks. Yeah, they're not going to.
I know, but he keeps bringing them in, right? He added that undrafted kid, Sean
Perry Nickerson too, Sean Stevens.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, how many do you need? But I think you hit the priority right there, John. I think safety, D tackle, or edge, say D line in general, and then receiver. I think those are the three positions, especially safety and D line, where they probably could use some help. And maybe Justin Simmons will be that guy, because they're kind of walking a tightrope, in my opinion, at safety. They're so thin there. I mean, I think it was encouraging. The Eagles put out a video clip of their players, posing for different pictures and stuff. And Sidney Brown was part of that compilation.
Oh yeah, Sidney's ready to go, man. I've been telling people that. I saw Sidney. He looks like he could play right now.
Right, he did the gritty in this video I'm talking about that the Eagles released. That's not easy to do. That's a little, that's a hardship on the ACL. So he seemed to pull that off okay. So maybe he'll be ready. But the Eagles, they like to take things slow. We saw it with Nakobe this spring. They're not pushing him. They're probably going to take things slow with Sidney as well. But he's 22 years old. I mean, that knee surgery, he can bounce back from that, in a snap of a finger. But so maybe he's ready. But again, even if he is, there's still three safeties on this roster that are known guys. CJ Gardner-Johnson, Reed Blankenship, and Sidney Brown. And then you get to maybe Mekhi Gardner, Tristan McCollum, Andre Sam, an undrafted free agent.
And Avante, the 2-for-1 guy.
Yes, perhaps Avante. And Bradbury, who practiced all of 2 minutes this spring. Maybe he makes the transition to safety like Nick had talked about during the spring, that maybe he'll play.
But here's the thing about Simmons. And here's what I think, and I want to throw it off you. I think the Eagles want Reed Blankenship to be a starting safety on this team. I think they like Reed Blankenship, and they believe in Reed Blankenship. And you talk about that video, who was front and center? Reed Blankenship, which tells you something. Yes, they think he's a part of this team, and he's an impactful part of this team. You're not bringing in Justin Simmons to be a backup. So if Reed Blankenship is your starter and you believe in him, Justin Simmons isn't coming here.
That's right. Yeah, you're right. And so who is in that second tier? Eddie Jackson? Is he someone that you can bring in as a depth piece? Because CJ Gardner-Johnson is your other starting safety. Yeah. He's not playing in the slot. The Eagles have way too many options in the slot.
17 slot corners now.
Right. I mean, and I think the rookie's going to win that job. I think Cooper DeJean is going to start as a rookie in the slot. So yeah, that you're right. You're not going to bring in somebody to supplant Reed Blankenship, because let's be honest, the Eagles like to say, hey, look at us. We found this guy as an undrafted free agent out of Middle Tennessee State, kudos to us, so they want to run him out there. They want to showcase him. The guy did lead the Pro Bowl voting, for whatever that's worth, at one point during the season last year. But again, he's another guy that, he tends to get nicked up a little bit, had some rib issues last year. So you're going to need to bring in somebody off the bench, and maybe that's where Maddox comes in. So maybe they don't bring in a safety. Maybe they're happy with Maddox and the fact that he can do it. And as I think Christian Parker alluded to, safety is a very tough position in this defense because you have to communicate everything. You have to be very talkative back there, and you have to understand every nuance of this defense. So to bring somebody in late at that spot, you're going to get a crash course in having to learn all that. So maybe they'll go defensive line. Maybe they're waiting for somebody to shake loose there, or linebacker. Maybe they bring in another linebacker to the mix. I'd like to see Sean Bradley come back and see what he can do in that mix. But there are ways for them to go to add a veteran, and Howie, it is acquisition season. He brought in the 2 linebackers last year in August, Miles Jack, who retired, and
he came back.
And then he went back to the Steelers.
Yeah.
And then Zach Cunningham. So, he's going to bring in somebody, and it's going to be interesting to see the position that he brings that person in at.
See, to me, the clear winner for me, or the clear, if it were me and I were Howie Roseman, I would go defensive tackle.
Yeah.
It honestly loops back to what we started this interview with, Ed. You talking about Clint Hurtt and how important that man is because of the guys he's developing. I think in order to get the most out of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, you have to have some sort of rotation that when they're not on the field, it's not a complete Grand Canyon type of drop-off. And I just don't know if you're going to get that with Marlon Tuipulotu or Moro Ajomo. I think
PJ Mustafer.
I mean, I'd like to see a guy there.
I put 3 bubble players
and give him some depth so that the pressure's not on Carter all the time.
Ed, I put up 3 bubble players on SI yesterday who got a chance to make some noise for a roster spot. One of them was Mekhi Gardner, we just talked about because of the issues at force safety. One of them is Max Sharping because that was a weird signing, late signing. And that tells you something. It's like, all right, Max has started 38 games in the NFL. So that tells me either you don't trust Matt Hennessy or he's not healthy. Trevor Keegan's not ready. Dylan McMahon's not ready. So you bring in Max Sharping. And then the third one was the guy I just mentioned, PJ Mustafer. He's a legitimate big guy, nose tackle type. And as Xander's saying, look, if you lose Jordan Davis, you can't play the way Vic wants to play with those 50 fronts, with those 5-man fronts, because then you're throwing Marlon Tuipulotu in there, weighs 300 pounds. He can do it, but he's not going to do it effectively. So if you got a big 325-pound guy like PJ Mustafer and he can play at all, you got a backup for Jordan Davis. Those are my 3 guys.
Yeah, they're
like
good.
them, different.
I saw that. I liked him. How old is Sharping? Do you know that, Mighty Max?
27, I believe.
Okay, so he's young because I know they brought in Dennis Kelly last year, and everybody thought, wow, he's going to make this team, but he didn't have anything left.
Max is 27.
Yeah. So Max. Yeah. So I like those 3 picks. Hard to dispute them. I mean, I would probably go 3 different directions, but
all right, let's hear them.
Well, I mean, I like Andre Sam. I think he's got a real shot, an undrafted kid. They didn't bring in many undrafted guys because they didn't have the roster room, 7 of them. Yeah. Gabe Hall, perhaps. I mean,
everybody loves Gabe. Yeah,
he's got good size. He plays defensive tackle. Maybe he's a guy that can play on that defensive line. Mustafer, we'll see. Does he have the quickness, to kind of occupy 2 blockers? I don't know, but I would go maybe Sam and Andre Sam, Gabe Hall, 2 undrafted guys. They're probably going to keep 1 or 2 undrafted guys. They always do. And then that running back, another undrafted kid, Kendall Milton. Is that his name? The kid from Tennessee?
Kendall Milton from Georgia. Yeah.
From Georgia.
Well, I've always wanted to see, we have seen it at times with Jordan Howard, even Jay Ajayi, if you want to go back even further, those one-cut running backs. The Eagles are always looking for these 3-down guys who wiggle, and I want to see somebody who just hits the freaking line. Yeah, and I think Kendall Milton could be that guy, but
he
are they even going to keep 4 running backs? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the issue. And even if you don't want to keep him, there's another kid who just went out of my head.
Lou Nichols.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't at the. Oh, the tight end, EJ Jenkins. I like EJ Jenkins.
Yeah, EJ looked good, and
I think he's a possible bubble guy at tight end because you have Calcaterra, who Nick praised as having a good spring.
Nick seems to love Grant Calcaterra. I've seen nothing from Grant Calcaterra. I like him, but I've seen nothing.
Yeah.
The Eagles seem to see more.
Well, yeah, they drafted him, so he's got a little bit of a leg up there. But yeah, you got CJ Uzama, Dallas Goedert. Are they going to keep 4 tight ends? Probably not. But EJ Jenkins to me could be a bubble player, depending on if guys are banged up at some point during training camp and he steps up and shines. But he's probably more of a practice squad guy. But yeah, to get back to Xander's point, I think defensive line, defensive tackles specifically, makes a lot of sense. We'll see if Gabe Hall, once the pads come on, we're going to learn more about what they have up front. And maybe that's what Howie's waiting for, is those first few padded practices before he says, hey, we need some help here. So you're going to be watching the Gabe Hall and the PJ Mustipher and the Andre Sam, those types of players, to see when they put the pads on, can that translate into what they did?
Yeah, that's when
in the spring.
That's when Reed Blankenship, the day the pads came on, they were like, ooh, look at Reed Blankenship. It still matters.
Yeah, absolutely matters. If you can't translate from your pajamas in spring to the pads in the summer, then you're going to be toast, and they're going to look to replace you. So that's probably what if he's going to make an addition to this team, it's probably going to happen in August, I would guess, or late July, because training camp starts a little earlier this year. July 23rd, they begin to trickle in, and then July 24th, I assume, is going to be the first practice. They won't put pads on, obviously, right away.
No, you got the ramp up period. They're not allowed to. Yeah.
That's right. So, but by the end of July, early August, if they don't like what they see from some of these guys, how he's going to be on the phone and trying to bring somebody in.
Yep, we'll see what they end up doing. Make sure you guys follow Ed Kracz on Twitter and X, or whatever you want to call it, at Kracz E. Read all his work at SI.com. Ed has some of the best pieces and some of the best overreactions you will ever find. They're making headlines all off season long. Ed, thanks for joining the show, man. We appreciate you being here today.
Just one question, Xander. Did you ever get to the bottom of that betting situation in Brazil that we discussed last week? Are you on that at all? Have you made any calls?
I have boots on the ground in Sao Paulo now. They are working on getting the intel back to me. And by Ed Kratz's next appearance, I'm told we will have more information on the betting.
All right, man.
I'm going to call it Sao Paulo, Brazil now. Sao Paulo, Brazil.
All
betting gate shall be solved soon. Ed, thanks for doing it, man.
Get to the bottom, buddy. All right, guys.
Yeah,
have a good week.
There's Ed Kracz on Bird 365. Always good to talk to Ed Kracz. He brings a good comedic relief too at times, as well as great information. But he does have that good comedic relief too, which is good to have on the show. Johnny Mac, wrapping up the week here. Thought we had a good Friday show. I had one little brain fart. I'll blame that on the booze last night. Maybe one too many drink last night. I had a little brain fart.
We all get that. If the president can have a brain fart, you can have a brain fart. So, he has one every day, basically. So,
someone hit me with that in the chat. They said, "Don't go Biden on us now, Xander." I said, "Oh man, that's not. If I'm getting that's not a good look."
It happens. It happens to me all the time. Hopefully you got a partner that'll step in.
Yeah, you bailed me out, Johnny Mac. I appreciate that.
And by the way, Ed mentioned Sydney Brown. Yeah, Sydney's. You need a certain amount of time to let that thing heal from a medical perspective. But I've been saying it all. Sydney's going to be ready, if not week 1, very, very early.
Yeah, so a lot of interesting questions. Ed brought it up. I mean, a lot of questions on this defense. I mean, there's a lot of optimism, there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of upside, but there is a lot of unproven on the defense, and we're going to see.
Oh yeah, a ton of it is. I mean, we all talk about how good the corners are. They're all unproven.
They're all unproven too, right? I mean, Ed went as far as to say that he felt better about that position, but that's another position. They're unproven. I mean, they haven't played a lot of these young guys a significant amount of time in the NFL or really at all, some of them. So we're going to see, how it all plays out. But overall, do you feel better about the defense going into this year than you did at this time?
Oh, yeah. Well, I said from the start, I mean, I do have tremendous respect for Vic Fangio. He's going to, he's going to get this team, you know, a lot better. They're going to be better prepared, better taught. They're going to buy in, which I think was maybe the bigger problem with Sean Desai, because I don't think teaching was his problem. But I don't know if everybody bought in. They're going to buy in with Vic, more likely. You might have one guy here and there, always, but for the most part, and he's a great, you know, he sort of has a great feel for the game. That's what the Eagles keep talking about. He's got this reputation of calling the right thing at the right time, or understanding how to set people up and get a big play in a big situation to maybe get them off the field. I think they're going to be much improved, but you know, I think there's still some talent issues on the defensive side, as we talked about the uncertainty. But I've said Vic will have them near middle of the road, which will be a big improvement compared to last year when they were in the bottom 5. I think, you know, if they're 15, 16, I think you're fine from a defensive standpoint.
Yeah, I think they're going to get there as well. I mean, I feel good about Vic Fangio. I know we have a lot of unproven guys and a lot of potential that we'll see how it all pans out. But I do feel like we at least have a guy that's going to put them in the best position to succeed, which goes a long way, especially for a young guy in the NFL. So pretty good stuff. That's going to do it for the show, and that's going to do it for the week here on Birds 365. Another good week, 1 week closer to the season. Everybody, it is coming quick. We are just 77 days away. I mentioned it at the start of the show. 77 days away until the Eagles are kicking off the ball in Sao Paulo, Brazil, as we just
renamed Sao Paulo. Yeah. Sal's going. I was talking to Sal, so he's going to be in Brazil. So
I have a good relationship.
Call it Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Well. I'd like to try and get Sal on the show, Johnny Mac. I have a good relationship with him as well. Just because I've worked with him behind the scenes on one of our other shows in season, and I think he'd be a great guest to have here on Birds 365, a knowledgeable guy.
Oh, very knowledgeable. Sal's a great guy. Yeah, he told me I was trying to get him last year. I forgot about it. So we'll try to get Sal on the show. Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guest to have.
Yeah, for sure. Damn, it's Friday. Week flew by. Twiz, it sure did. I want to thank everybody for being here this week, for being here today, and really for all week and for all summer. I mean, you guys have been great all summer long. The numbers in all of our shows are awesome. You guys are keeping it all rocking and rolling, and we appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you guys being here today. Make sure you drop a like on your way out. Looks like we're at 87 likes. Can we get that to 100, everybody? Let's get that up. Hit that like button on your way out. So we appreciate you. Fly Parks, Mike Fittery, Dank, Bird Gang, James Carver, Daz, Twiz, James Jones, our resident Commander fan. Always giving you your shout out, James. CZ, anybody else I missed. I'm sorry for missing you, but I appreciate you, even if I don't mention you. Johnny Mac, good show today. Good week of shows, brother. We'll talk to you on Monday. All right, man.
All right, sounds good. Everybody stay cool. Have a good weekend.
Stay cool. Have a good weekend. As Johnny Mac said, see you on